Sure. Can you hold me in?
So, you can inverted, diverted. So you should have some sort of ongoing notes for paper 1. Obviously, having allegedly submitted our internal assessments, meaning our FOA, and our written tasks 1 and 2 have definitely gone off. IOCs. Oh, I listen to music and just. I was like, I have so much to do, but I wanted to make a mixed tape with it. It's awesome. It's not as bad as we thought it was, honestly. It's not fantastic, but it's really not. It's not horrible. There's this fantastic little bit at the beginning. Maybe if you, with your permission, we can all listen to it, and or you can. It's like me talking, so it's yes, the audio, so it's quite rote. All right, so you're going to talk about 10-12 minutes, and then after that, I'll ask you a series of questions, which will allow you to sort of just expand upon some of the fantastic things you said during the process of your conversation. We're taking some notes, so don't don't get freaked out. It's like you ever watch like these crappy ghost shows, where they allegedly are in these haunted places, they have all these ridiculous technology, and like. You can hear in the background. There's some kind of it's like that's what you sound like. I was like, I swear I can hear. Oh, did you hear there? It was like, oh. Speaking in tongues. You're like, no. It's like, we're gonna start now. You go. And that bit, I said, well, just point your thesis. Like, I don't have a thesis. Poor little poltergeist. But when you did get your thesis, which you somehow made something happen there was an extensive, 14-second pause. Right before the fourth part of the commentary. So bad. We added up with the FOA and stuff because that's how that works. It all sort of becomes the same number for everybody. It's not a big deal. Sir.
Can we turn on the ACs?
This one's on. It's really, really nice over here. Since you have to sit there, they have University.
Are you streaming this somewhere?
It is. Big streams, all sorts of stuff. Just experimenting. Whoever's watching our YouTube channel probably knows.
What is it?
Maybe.
Where is it?
It's on a thing called the internet.
Oh, I see it.
You heard about this thing? It's crazy.
I think I heard
You
it.
can check out the weather in Dubai. You can also see people hitting and running with football. All right. So I have here a stack of
You isolated?
irony. We're going to talk about literature
You think
today. Should make.
Come hither.
Yeah, pop in there. You're actually in. You're in the screen. You don't have to move.
But I feel like I need to be more culturally integrated.
Or culturally integrated.
Yeah.
All right. Or marginalized or. And
Welcome, comrade.
wait, token Caucasian kid walking from the screen. Now think about your paper 2. Don't have to write anything yet. Don't have to write anything. Partially close those guys. So, time to whatever you call that. Now, raise your hand. Who chose to write? No right or wrong with any of this. If there was a right or wrong, then somebody did a poor job of selecting text for part 2. Who chose The Things They Care by Tim O'Brien as one of the 2 texts for your mock exam? Just 2 of you. Wow. Interesting. Because that was the overwhelming popular choice for the other guys. So I'm assuming everybody else here did a combination of mounts in 1.0. So, if anybody said Carter Conrad or Duffy, I'm very upset.
Remember, like 20 minutes before the exam, like, wait, we can use Carter or Duffy for it. And you're like, no, I can't.
It's a joke, right? See, that's a joke. So, are viewers will know that.
No, I didn't use it, but like, I had to run out. I told Midway, and Midway was like, "Wait, what?"
No, come on, like Midway doesn't know that already.
No, she was actually pretty surprised.
So, all right. Seriously, okay. Let me ask you this, raise your hand. Who picked the question regarding, I think it was number 4.
Narrative perspective.
Nice. How is narrative perspective used to achieve the author's goals and intentions? Raise your hand. We're gonna go through those. You don't remember yours, it's the last one. That's even weirder. That she would just know, you would physically know which one you picked, but not subject or consequence. Who picked the last one, number 5, because that gives you 6. How valid is the assertion that literature is a voice for the oppressed? Okay. Who picked how the characters from these 2 works are representational of people from the time and place in which they are written? What are you doing, guys? Well, you found it. Oh, wow. We got a viewer.
Am I the only one who did narrative
Wait, where
perspective?
am I?
No. It was a significant option on the other one. It's not live. There's about 47 seconds.
Oh wait, we're streaming this.
You were,
Am I in it?
you were literally waiting in front of this computer as if that. You just won the internet, buddy. You're like my great grandma with that one. Hello. Wait, to what extent can the meaning of a literary work change over time? Anybody pick that? Okay, so we're covered in terms of picking narrative perspective, voice for the oppressed, and that's it. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is, let's start with that narrative perspective. If you went and used this one on your paper too, I'm okay with that. I'm not asking you to change anything. You always see books, so that's an option for you. Do me a favor, not too long. Bullet points are completely acceptable. And if this is what you put in your exam, then so be it. Let us know. And if you did pick narrative perspective, now you have to sort of make an effort here to quickly think of one. Pick one of those texts. I don't care which one of the 3 you pick. Tell us what are the non-negotiable components. So, for example, if we know our 2 texts very well, and someone were to quickly say, Andy, if I'm talking about Tim O'Brien's thing they carried and their perspective, what would you absolutely need to hear in that response for you to sort of assess that as being a successful response? And that could literally be a bullet point or 2. Because essentially this is your thesis statement, if not 50% of it, given the 2 texts. So there's all sorts of things we can go into in terms of choice evidence to support your argument. But if you're going to say, Tim O'Brien's the thing they carried, and narrative perspective, what absolutely has to be there? Because interesting enough, a bunch of people picked up, and a lot of the responses were different. They weren't all the same, which is interesting.
Metafiction.
All right, I had people talk, we'll get into that. I had people talk about that. That didn't necessarily, if it wasn't incorporated effectively, it didn't help answer the question. Do that. Because what might happen in your exam is the other 5 questions might not be really hot for you. And it's like, okay, wow, I got narrative perspective, I can do that. We need to go ahead and have, and no one's going to memorize. I say that. No one's going to memorize 4 or 5 essays. Got one viewer. Is that you? Maybe. A couple kids in us. Nonetheless, regardless of their ethnicity or religious denomination, you need to have an outline. Right? So, their perspective for this text incorporates what? Then we can potentially talk about what choice references to the text evidence is going to help us work out. The issue I had with a lot of our paper 2 mocks was a lot of the stuff you talked about was smart, and I completely agree with it, but it's like, man, if I'm going to talk about Andy Zhang and his talents, and I don't talk about him being some sort of what's the word? Persona, right? Talented, insane, advanced engine. Stuff. He definitely has a high level performance, correct? And in a strong language. So it's like I could talk about his math skills if that's applicable, I have no idea. Or some other things Andy might be solid at, but it's like, well, how did you not talk about his ability to use language in his theatrical persona prowess? If that makes sense. That's right. Everybody's gonna talk. This is the time you write something down. In their perspective. And we need to talk about some universal things that a lot of us want to avoid and or include. It might not have just been your paper too. A lot of people might have issues with certain things that you can quickly fix or add if necessary. See, I already have issues with this. I haven't read this one yet because I told her we'd look at it in class. If she were to tell me that this is what you actually have to have in successful response from their perspective for the things they carry, because that's what she picked, it's already wrong. Not wrong, it's not right. She's correct. She's definitely correct. She's completely missing, like, you don't get that text. If that's what you think it's all about. Right? Alright, absolutely necessary, something we would be very upset if the candidate did not include in their paper 2 response to including, we should say, the things they carry. Narrative perspective. Yeah, we all just did. Oh, which one did you pick? Alright, we'll start with nothing. Non-negotiable. What do we have to hear in Mouse to consider that remotely successful?
As we get more.
Like another that's successful. As if we were like, if we're talking about a 3 on your paper 2, what would we need? We don't want. So tell us what would you absolutely want to include in the response regarding this narrative perspective?
The rhetoric of the Jews as verbal, and also Germans as students.
So you're talking complete straight up metaphor stuff, right?
And also the
Here's the thing, everybody wants to talk about that. That just makes sense. Does that have anything to do with narrative perspective?
Are we talking about relating to that?
Yes, that was not just mouse in general. That's the problem.
And Mouse is categorized as a memoir.
I can't get through with these table things like this. It was a bad choice. It was a bad choice. Milk was a bad choice. So what'd you say?
Where do you go?
Not late, am I?
No.
Should have like left one of the tables like open.
We could put a little hole in there.
So what's the question?
The narrative perspective.
Narrative perspective.
First off, obviously you're not picking that one if you don't know what narrative perspective is really getting at. Come back to you and Mouse. We'll go with somebody who picked the things they carried. And
Nope.
Anush, the video. All right, I already enjoy that. I'm already okay with all of that. Let's just see what she texted. She used that classic word, which here's the thing, if you were to see like Tim O'Brien's book at Barnes & Noble or some sort of bookstore, you might see like that buzzword, storytelling, you know? Because it's something we associate, it's a theme or a topic or a subject we associate with that word. And you said something about two. How'd you say that? And what are those two different perspectives? Fantastic word choice. Reminiscing. If these things are not things you might have said or would say, you need to write them down. Because this is, if I'm grading this guy, I'm thinking, all right, this is exactly what I would expect you to say. Right? Okay, go ahead. Great. Now, she just immediately brought up three things, right? Ruminative, reflective, pensive, right? And use that term veteran. Fantastic. Now, that's a very specific word. Versus or being contrasted or juxtaposed or dichotomously aligned with youth. So really get these two things. And the big idea is, and this is what that storytelling thing is, it's a great text to choose, but you have to, here's the thing, you just can't throw out storytelling, storytelling. Or now, that metaphor thing's great. And a couple people tried to use that metaphor with Mouse and the narrative perspective, and I wasn't really sure if it was successful. It's like, it just doesn't automatically, kind of does, but it's not just like this. This is without a doubt. Some people tried to answer this thing and didn't mention that. And I think I gave them a decent grade, but I have to go back and look at it, because I don't know how that's possible. It's just so well written. Isn't that really the big one? The narrative perspective? It is that whole, I've been there, I understand that, I'm trying to deal with this, versus in the moment and the youthful aspect. All right. Here's the thing about narrative perspective. Who picked that one? Andy?
Yeah.
Great. Who else picked it? Awesome. Who did not pick it? How successful were the non-narrative perspective people in hitting criteria B, appreciation of literary features? There is a whole criterion about your understanding appreciation of literary features. If you pick, obviously, the narrative perspective is already within what we would call the lens of literary lens. So you're already one or even a couple up on everybody else, right? A couple of the ones I read were fantastic, but then, we all forget, even grading it, like, oh, this is so good. And it's like, oh, wait, criterion B, let's go back and read it again. Because obviously, they weren't saying a whole lot about literary features through their response. Or it was just sort of topical. I'm talking about this, and then this kind of spread some literary features at the end of a paragraph. It wasn't really integrated into the response. Your response is driven by the literary component, which is narrative perspective. If I say narrative perspective out of the context of this exam and say literary feature, what's the first thing that pops in your head? Anybody? Like literary feature, narrative perspective. What do you got, Megan?
Literary.
Yeah, narrative perspective is associated with literary feature. What do we call that literary feature? Can call it narrative. Can also call it what? Like a grade 8 level.
Point of view.
Point of view. And how many points of views do we have?
2.
Oh, good start. Kind of. Now we got first person, I, we, us, third person, he. Then we have that third, we call that third person limited. There's that third person omniscient where they're not in the story, but they can somehow understand or know what the characters are thinking. So if you pick that, at some point in time, you need to identify when and how specifically that point of view or narrative is being used. He uses multiple forms of narrative. So perspective is really who's telling us the story. It's like that context thing. I'm an older guy, my thought processes are different. I'm a younger guy, I think differently than the older guy. But it's also which of these short stories are told from the first person and which ones are told from the third person. Did you mention all of those components in your response?
The things they carry.
It doesn't matter which narrative perspective did you pick, or which text did you pick, 1.0?
And
So what'd you say, let's jump over to, let's go back to mouse because we started with mouse.
of mouse. I have to mention like the parallel dual narrative.
Awesome. So you already see, how many of you feel that your response was, I'm going to talk about text A. Now moving on to B, done. And we said sometimes that's an acceptable structure. How many of you did that? No?
Coming in?
So, we're coming in.
Sorry.
How many of you talk about text one, we're done with text one, then you talk about text two, and you're pretty much done?
Kind of like
Yeah.
All right. How many of you made an effort, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, to find shared sub-concepts between both texts? You did. You did. You did. If you listen to Andy with that, he already said that dual thing, and you said dual thing. If you pick mouse and the things they carried, you already have that older mentality versus the younger mentality. How many of you mentioned in the things they carry, or would you mention things they carry, that there's that reflective thing? You know, it's trying to work through his problems. That's what they're doing in there. That sounds like logic. It is logic.
well, I kind of did like text one, text two, and then I had like a paragraph that kind of like links
Okay.
something,
It also
and then
works completely. But I think just given the narrative structure, this way they're told, and both those text mouse and things they carry, there's so many shared components in there that they're very right for a proper comparative essay. So we say we would have to have the dual narrative in mouse. What is that dual narrative? Is the dual narrative? Who can identify the proper narrative, like point of view in mouse?
Yeah, we can identify.
First person is the third person.
Yeah, first and third person. It switches between like Vladek's like reminiscing, like recalling his experiences, and also the present day.
Interesting. It's skewed because it's a graphic novel. I think it was on paper to be very clear because of the punctuation, right? When do we see quotations in mouse, or do we? Probably not, because we get speech bubbles. Do we ever get first person omniscient stuff from Black? Do we ever hear him say, "Oh, I hope Marty's not upset with me"? Like here, is it always a speech bubble with him, or is there like the thought bubble? Or the little narrative thing at the bottom, which we often see in mouse?
I think it's mostly speech.
The narrative perspective comes from art. It does. The only time we see non-speech bubble was it had been 2 years since I'd been to my dad's house. He's not there. It's at the bottom, because he is our narrator. So we do have a dual perspective. We have that, and here's the thing, we have the chronological separation of the two. So that's it. We got one narrative which takes place, because that's that cool thing about narrative. It really is the story. And narrative perspective, or point of view, how it's told. We got the story as it takes place, which is kind of like a flashback, right? Pops into there, is a flashback to Nazi-occupied Poland. We have the present day more or less, which is in Survival's Tale, Rego Park. So you have to do both for that. You have to identify the perspective. You also have to identify the technical point of view that's being used. Okay. Anybody else about those two works, which are absolutely necessary with the narrative perspective? Someone mentioned that storytelling thing. I had a couple of exams which were focused on the storytelling thing, which I think is massive. I think that I really think that the things they carry with narrative perspective is really. What else do we get in terms of who is telling a story, which is a little skewed, and the things they carry? about it. Think about those individual short stories and how they work. Who tells them? Think of one you absolutely know. I think in this one, this guy's telling the story. Who can tell us more or less the name of the chapter of the girl that goes to Vietnam, her boyfriend's there? Who tells us that story?
Wasn't it the guy?
The guy. They're all guys. Yeah.
No.
Only people tell stories now are males. It's Rat Kylie. But so Rat Kylie's girlfriend went to Vietnam? Exactly. So the point is, it's like that's not even his story. It's not his narrative. So that's that storytelling. If you're going to bring up the storytelling thing, storytelling, which is true, that's how that works with narrative perspective. And that's that whole how oral language can change. And so if you who wrote about the things they carried and brought up the whole metafiction thing? Should have. Some people just mentioned it, and I was like, well, at least you mentioned it because it's necessary. Some people were fairly successful in tying that back into metafiction. How convinced is Rat Kylie about that story being true? If you're not sure, you need to go back and do that. He's extremely convinced. I think he's ready to fight a couple people there. Yeah. He wholeheartedly believes that all of that took place. Does Tim O'Brien, the character, believe that it took place?
He's a little bit reflective on
That's his sort of tone to the author's tone to the whole work. I don't think he does so much. But doesn't that support the whole storytelling premise stuff? I mean, isn't one of the standard themes in that is like, we all know this is fake, but because of the perspective and the fact that these people, or maybe that guy doesn't exist, but somebody like him exists. So it shows the things they carry. All right, let's go ahead and get some stuff out of the way real quick. You don't know what metafiction is, but you know what metafiction is. We've discussed this on numerous occasions. Some people had a definition on there which was confusing to me. If you look up a proper definition, it will be confusing to you. But the point is, it's the story, fiction is the key word. It's presented in such a way that we question whether it really took place. Even though we know it's fake. That's what that is. So sometimes we use this word artifact. Like, I don't even know what that means, but that's really what that means. An artifact is something that is real. So it has a level of reality. Now, for everybody, especially you, and raise your hand. I wrote an outline on one of my pages. Good. Raise your hand. I did not write any form of outline on any of my pages. Raise your hand.
I forgot what
You don't know? Then you should know. Ready? I brushed my teeth this morning. Raise your hand. Awesome. All right, that's the kind of person you are. And I'm okay with that. You don't remember. But the point is, if it's a proper habit, you might not remember. The point is, if you know you're doing it all the time, it's just something you don't even think about, then you're just like, yeah, I had to, I always do. And you better write an outline. Who grades your exam, Maggie? Take a wild guess. Can't give them a name. Someone give me some sort of classification.
Human.
Good. A teacher. What type of teacher? An English teacher. And an English teacher pulls up anybody's 25% of the final grade and sees that you aren't writing an outline. The assessment criteria does not say outline or no outline. Trust me. They're going to be like, outline? They're not supposed to do that. But we can assume it might have that effect. Put an outline. Got to. Make sure that outline is proper. These are things I'm really going to talk about. It might change as you go, but I've thought them out and they make sense. There's no way you can do a proper, like, it's not necessary. But if you're going to do a tit for tat, this point exists in both texts, this point exists in both texts, there's no way you can do that without an outline.
What if we have an outline, but we deviate from that outline in our response, and it's based off of, like, it's for our own use, it's not for someone else to like see it.
No one's expected to read that. And half the stuff that we make for ourselves are hardly unintelligible. That's fine, they're my notes. But if they don't see that you had any kind of planning, it's like, oh my God. I would be like, oh, this is probably not gonna be good. If I see something that looks like it's organized and smart, even if it's like complete rubbish, you know, cookies, whatever. She's like, oh, it looks nice. Like kids at least making an effort to be organized. They're thinking before they write, which hopefully the response will be a little bit better. Now, this is massive. This is huge. Listen to me. If you have an outline, the first thing, and you have to do before you do anything is look at those points. Ask yourself, if this is what I'm going to write about here, what literary devices would just automatically go there? Correct? And some of us are really, really hurting that criteria because we're not addressing them at all. And I'm reading going, oh my God, you should mention this here. And they know it. But given the nature of the task, in 2 hours, you're freaking out and you're writing, you kind of forget about it. Because you're so focused on justifying your ideas. And you forget about, well, how did the author get there? And what is that you're really talking about? If you're talking about mouse and narrative perspective, and you're talking about, well, it's set kind of in Nazi-occupied Poland, and then it goes back or forward, how are you going to say that to Rigo Park? What do we have? Do we just see Vladek talking about Poland, or do we basically get taken back to an alternative setting? That's called flashback. That is a flashback. And if we already have 2 different settings in terms of time, what literary device is that? Time, Greek, it's chronology. See what I'm saying? So it's like you're talking about it, but you never mention it. They're not going to give you points for that. So it's like, okay, no one wants you to be like, I wrote all this awesome stuff. Oh, by the way, there's a metaphor. There's there's pigs and there's cats, and it's like that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. Think about what you're really going to say in your response in that outline and be like, okay, there it is, there's that. Maybe I can mention imagery. How many characterization? What's wrong with that? Why not use that word characterized as? The youthful characters are presented as. Correct. So a lot of us had moments where we should have mentioned literary devices and we did not. How many of you mentioned the estranged relationship between Art and his father? It's conflict, right? This external conflict only increases the what for Art? Internal conflict. I mean, Art has massive amounts of internal conflict. Anybody struggling. Who mentioned that dual perspective business with Tim O'Brien? The older veteran trying to deal with his issues of having served in the military and what that means for him now. And the guy, what was his name? Who got out of the military and drove his parents' car around the lake for 6 days straight. Massive amounts of internal conflict. Do we feel really bad about things that happen to Vladimir? Should.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're the most cruel-hearted person, that when you see that little kid getting smashed against the wall, it's pretty horrible, even in simplistic graphic form. That's why it's cool. It's not like it's not properly realistic graphic. It's disturbing. What do you call that when the audience has this sort of level of emotional connection and response to the work?
Pathos.
Exactly. So it's like you're mentioning this stuff, but you're like, oh, just go ahead and call it what it is. So if you know, if you look at that outline and be like, chronology, internal conflict, external conflict, no one's going to be like, why did you use that term? Because that's what it is. You're not going to write a whole paragraph saying, it's external conflict because. I'm just going to, within my response, I'm already talking about this great word, the strange relationship between son and father, defined as the external conflict between these 2 characters, having an effect of internal conflict on our protagonist. Correct? So that's always the criterion that people have or struggle the most with, I should say. Considering with the things they carry. What do you call a collection of works which are like independent little works, but maybe they're interrelated?
Anthology.
Not an anthology. No, because the things they carry is not an anthology. He purposely wrote all those to be together. I would call them vignettes. That is a literary device. You probably, if you look up vignette, it'll take you out to find how it relates to literature. It's often used in drama, like a series of one-act plays might be defined as a vignette. I guarantee you, if you were to Google vignette and the things they carried, something should pop up.
Wait, so is Bloody Chamber and short stories?
I'm okay with that, if you want to call those vignettes. I think a couple of those short stories she did not originally write for that collection, you see what I'm saying? I know you might want to call the Wolf Trilogy 3 vignettes, because they are related. I think she purposely put all those together. I think she, if I'm not mistaken, she wrote like the Bloody Chamber, and they weren't all like, I'm going to sit down and write a bunch of short stories for one word. I think later she kind of put them together. So we could argue that. But this series of short stories within a purposeful single solitary work, we'll call those vignettes. So metafiction, vignette, that's the thing. If I'm talking about the things they carried, if I'm talking about Mouse, what technical words would always be there? Obviously a graphic novel, got a memoir, you have a historical account of
Animal allegory.
what's that? The animal allegory? Sure, absolutely. Now, who picked narrative perspective in moment point zero? Okay. How many of you who picked narrative perspective for anything immediately define the narrative perspective? Faye does over here, but once again, I don't like how she defines it. I'll read it for her. She's okay with that. She's a big girl. She says, many works of literature are written in the first person narrative perspective. This is true for both the things they carry. Is it?
No.
Aren't a couple of those? Is character O'Brien telling us all those stories?
No.
Definitely not first person.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I guarantee you a couple of those short stories don't have the word I in there, or me, or us. That's a very good point. Maybe she's right or wrong. At first glance, makes me think that's not completely right. I think he uses both. And we'll end at point zero. Here's the problem with point zero. That is not first person. Is it?
It's a frame there.
It's a frame narrative. Literally, I went to visit her first person. Is it first person? You could say it is, but then don't say Firdaus is necessarily the first person. So really what we have is we have this character, the doctor, goes to prison. She finally gets an opportunity to meet this Firdaus girl. Firdaus tells her story, and this is how it went. And that's when it switches, just like in a frame narrative, to her recounting her story. So essentially, she's telling us all of what she told her. Remind me to talk about the questionable nature of our narrators as well, if you pick that narrative perspective. All right, so regardless. While the things they carry contains both first person and third person narrative, 1.0 only contains first person narration. The things they carried uses third person narration to establish the true details in the war stories matter less than the message of the story. Both things they carry 1.0 use first person narrative to take the reader with the protagonist struggles, but 1.0 especially utilizes first person narration to give voice to oppressed females. Man, that's crazy confusing for me. Did you get any of that? I got some of it.
I heard first person.
But she's so focused on the technical point of view stuff. It's like that. I think she's completely missed the whole perspective, like the whole lens, like cultural aspect, levels of investment, who's telling us these stories. That needs to come up. But this apparently is the whole basis of her response. All right. What would you expect? Let's go over the. Let's go back to that things they carried. Who mentioned in their response the "Can we trust our author"? Anybody? That's a classic conundrum in all literature, right? For example, think about, I mean, if it's not like an archetype, like some,
deceptive narrative.
it's not deceptive. I like that. But if we think about it, if it's not an archetype, like that guy's just straight up evil. If we have some concerns about a character who might not be genuine, or maybe they're going to do something not nice, if you will, later in the novel, how do we know? Or how do we get these sentiments that maybe this guy's dubious? Have you ever met somebody and you had this preconceived notion that they're a complete jerkhole, and it turns out they're okay? So it's like, well, how did you get that? Now you would consider a false conception of that person. But he didn't know. So there was some sort of connectivity. Someone else related that to you.
Life. Gut feeling.
Gut feeling.
Intuition.
Well, I think what we have to get at with all these narrative perspectives are, we are limited to that person, right? So characterization is what the character does. And if he kills somebody, we know he's not necessarily on the up and up, maybe. But with that narrative perspective thing, the other characterization is how other characters react to them. And if our narrative perspective is reacting in a certain way, we generally will agree with our narrative. But if we talk about mouse, that's massive. Can you trust your narrator in mouse? And what word always comes up with the trust when it comes like to relating information? Do you trust a media source? Do you trust Fox News? Why? Because they are or not what? Bias. What's and this is more or less a bias. Credible. What is the opposite of bias? Mr. Bokar? Neutral. That's both those. I like objective. Is Art Spiegelman objective towards the subject matter of his work? No. And if you're in court, what would you immediately admit as evidence? Did you or did you not on such day point at the defendant or prosecution basically and say, call him a murderer? So, oh yeah, I did that. Yeah, I call my dad a murderer. It's like, no, I mean, you just said he had a strange relationship with his dad. So how can we completely trust everything that comes from him? I'm not saying it's the basis of your response, but it has to come up. Our perspective of Vladik is skewed. I'm not saying he's not like that, but art is not objective. It can't be. It's his own father, and they're not super, super close. He purposely picks and chooses elements that he wants to put in there. Who also mentions the whole quote-unquote alleged dialogue. Somebody used that word before. Is it really dialogue? It's dialogue in the narrative, but if we're saying that this is nonfiction, is it really dialogue? It's not. It doesn't fit into the little box. We're talking weeks and hours and years of recorded conversations, which have been now paraphrased and minimalized into 6 words, or maybe some sort of onomatopoeia. So even then, the narrative perspective, once again, is skewed. Because his original words, I could have an interview with you for 45 minutes, and I could take one sentence out of context and quote that, right? And now you sound like a complete jerk. And if I wasn't objective, I might do that. Students do that all the time. Mr. White said jerkhole. He said I was a jerkhole. I said you, something jerkhole. I guess I did say that. Jerkhole. Is that a word? We should make that a word now. Jerkhole.
Jerkhole.
It's a synthesis of pejoratives. So let's just hope that you're okay with this, and let's just think about all our arsenal in terms of narrative perspective with these texts. The Theranos thing is completely skewed as well. Is Sadawi objective, Andrew? You picked her.
Wait. Objective is non-biased. Wait,
Yes.
Yeah, non-biased. I guess she would be subjective.
Really? All right, let's go back. Here's the thing. Who picked narrative perspective? What are you answering with that question? What's the big part at the end?
Achieve goals and etc.
Who's
Authors.
the authors? Some of you weren't really strong with that. You have to write this down. You have to, at some point in time, truly say, this is the answer. What does Sadawi want to do? And man, if I want to do something, I'm not going to be
Show the corruption.
I'm not going to be overtly objective. I'm going to be biased as hell because I have a goal.
Show the evil of man.
Yeah.
Something like that. We can work on the best way to say that so you don't sound repetitive about men being horrible, men being horrible. Men are horrible. It's my class.
Like, yeah, I want to call subjective because she's like a feminist.
We want to think she's objective, but she's Dr. Nawal Sadawi. She's so smart and all this, but it's like, it's got to be a bit skewed for an effect. Think about your letters of recommendation. Are they objective?
No.
No way.
Absolutely.
Crazy. If they are, a lot of you could be going to community college of God. It's like I'll write everything down and be like, take it up, take it up, take it up. I knew who she is.
Jerk.
Yeah. But then I get rid of jerk, put that over here. He makes the best jerk chicken. It's a ace in the hole. Stupidest thing to put in there, but it sounds like you have strong culinary skills and everybody loves you. All right, so perspective. What are the intentions of Art Spiegelman? This is a difficult one. Who quoted him as saying, I didn't want to write a Holocaust 101 text? Do you know why we pick people who are still alive? Because we can literally quote them and tell our examiner, this is what they said they were trying to do with this text.
I think he's trying to show like the different natures of people.
He'll say it. He'll tell you on many levels what he's trying to do with that. One, sort out his relationship with his dad, use that as a subject matter of something. He had a lot of artistic, right, inspiration for that. It's something he wanted to do. I don't know necessarily which came first, the chicken or the egg. He's like, I'm going to write a really long comic. Now I need something solid to work with. I'll use my dad. Probably was something like that. Which is really cool to think about. It's like, I know what I want to do. It's like, oh God, how am I going to do that? And that's where that conundrum comes in. It's like, well, how honest am I? What do I show of myself? What do I show of my family? If we remove conflict from a narrative, we don't have a story. Sometimes people accentuate conflict to make it more interesting. So there's that perspective thing. Who mentioned with narrative perspective the authorial intrusion? One of my students, your colleagues in that exam mentioned, he comes in and actually becomes no longer Art the character. Thank you for reminding me of that. But Art Spiegelman, the author, he literally points at us and says, I hope this doesn't mess up my extended metaphor. That's the author, not the character. And it's one of those very randomly obscure. Kurt Vonnegut is a classic example of using authorial intrusion, where he just comes and starts talking to you as the author in the text. It's a bizarre thing. But it's like, wow, you just talked about authorial intrusion, and this student knew what it was, and they got very upset they didn't say it, because it would have been like super cool. Going back to O'Brien. Oh my God, who picked O'Brien? Man, how many of you used O'Brien? And only O'Brien, or maybe Tim O'Brien once in O'Brien, 3-year response, and never said character O'Brien versus author O'Brien. Confusing and really, really problematic. That Tim O'Brien is not Tim O'Brien. There's character Tim O'Brien, and there's author Tim O'Brien. And he told us in that fantastic Arlington, Virginia library lecture, that's not me. Who used the term composite character in the response? All of you probably should. We know we pick character. All our works of fiction are loosely, even Duffy has some, semi-autobiographical elements in their works. And that's a standard element of the creative process for an author. But that Tim O'Brien character is a composite character. I don't know what the number is. It's probably 79% Tim O'Brien. Or maybe it's just 52% Tim